Welcome to the Beauty and Violence Podcast. Today we have myself, Rose.
And Chris.
All right, let's get started. So yesterday we had RDA versus Paul Felder. So pretty much before we get into that, I was wrong about all my picks, which is not surprising because I didn't know like 90% of the fighters. Like the rate of new fighters coming in is just crazy. So it's hard to keep up with them unless you're watching like every episode of the Contender series and just every fight card with every fight, which is like impossible by this point. But to get into the main event, that I mean, I'm not completely surprised that what's his name, RDA was able to win that fight because like you guys did say, he had a full camp. He throws a lot of volume and whatnot. So, I mean, I'm not that surprised, but Paul Felder definitely gave him a run for his money. So what do you think about that fight? What do you think about the main event?
Yeah, well, I was definitely wrong for almost all my picks. For those predictions yesterday, only RDA versus Felder was the one I got right. Um, I think you're right. RDA had a full camp. Felder had to, cut weight, take that short notice. I'm not surprised at all that RDA won, but Felder's a tough son of a bitch. He was taking some shots, takedowns. He looked good even on short notice.
Paul Felder, the thing about him is that he's extremely durable, but it seems like he kind of has a cap on how much he can, like it seems like he's not like the most versatile like MMA fighter. Like it's like RDA has a lot more versatility. What I thought RDA had on his side was no, what I thought would work against RDA is the fact that he's been in so long and he's had so many fights, so many wars. But he proved to be more durable than I thought he was going to be.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think he's tied for the most hours in the octagon. I forgot with who, but it's 7 hours
See
of
that
total octagon time.
exactly. That plays to my point because, and then I was thinking, in the past he fought at lightweight and he got knocked out by Jeremy Stevens. So I'm like,
Oh
okay,
yeah,
I'm
little
like,
heathen.
yeah. So I'm like, I'm thinking, I'm calculating everything. I'm like, okay, 7 hours of fighting, and you're about to fight Paul Felder, someone who is as durable as they come, and he can take it as much as he could give it. So I'm like, okay, Paul Felder, might have an advantage in some ways, but yeah, that volume was way too much for him. The between the fact that uh what's his name? RDA was playing the long game of, laying and praying, plus, he had the volume going. Like it was just too much for him. But
Yeah, I think
yeah,
it was the takedowns. You know what? I still think RDA might have outstruck him if they stood in the center, but you could tell RDA taking him down, midway or at the end of every round, Felder on his back. That turned the tide.
so I want to talk about like what were like what were like the standout moments of the night or what was the standout moment of the night for you
Just that fight or the whole main card?
for the whole main card?
Oh, that's an easy one. That's Chaos just sending that guy to the Shadow Realm. That was, first of all, him just standing there dead, staring at his opponent for minutes at a time, and then straight down the pipe just murders that dude. That was awesome.
So it's always amazing to see like by the way, that was a standout moment for me as well because the card for the most part was like a snooze fest. Like that might have been honestly overall that might have been one of the worst cards I've ever seen like since I became a UFC fan.
Yeah, it
But
wasn't great.
it wasn't great, but that moment, well that was like a gem, that was like a hidden treasure like at that point. So that dude uh to me it's always impressive like when a new fighter breaks out into the scene and like knocks like someone who's considered to be a hammer into like the shadow realm. Like that dude, that African guy, that Nigerian guy is usually he's considered to be the hammer. Like when you see his fight against Nico Price, like he sent Nico Price to the shadow realm and he just came forward. Like it wasn't even any technique. It was like some Ngannou type of shit. Like a he was like a baby Ngannou that night. And that's basically like how all his fights were before then. So I'm thinking, I don't know who this guy is, so I'll just go with the guy who has mostly KOs like for his career, right? So, but it's always impressive. Like, what's another example of someone who just like comes in and they just knock someone who's like a hammer into the shadow realm? So, like, you have one example that comes to mind is when Uzdemir was knocking everyone to the shadow realm, and
Oh yeah.
he came in and fought Jimmy Manua and just knocked them senseless. Then you have the example of what's the name of that guy that knocked out Uzdemir recently, who was just doing all
Yeah,
that weird shit?
that guy's my favorite prospect. That's Jiri or Yuri. I don't know exactly how to say his name, but yeah, he cleaned no time's clock. I mean, that was a wild fight.
Yeah, like you have to be excited for those type of prospects who just come in and just like become the hammer in those situations.
Yeah, and you know what? Before, I mean, that was his UFC debut, I believe. The guy Yuri, but you watch some of his like last 12 Ryzen fights. I mean, he was just knocking dudes out. Now, he's a big guy. He's a light heavyweight. Is he on the horse meat in the other leagues? It's possible, but
He said the horse
he,
meat.
you never know when you're outside the UFC. But man, he came in with that heat. You know what? Light heavyweight is interesting again, and I kind of want to see him win one more fight, and then it's not probably not plausible, but I'd like to see him get a title shot soon. But there's just too much. There's just the top 10 is too stacked in light heavyweight.
That's a good point because we were talking about recently how the light heavyweight division might be the weakest division, but like they're really coming back. Like you got, if you look at people like Yuri, you have what's that guy? You got Rackage, like who
Yeah.
completely wrecked Anthony Smith. You got Thiago Santos. You have
Yep.
Glover. You have
Old
Glover
man
making,
Glover
yeah,
coming back.
he's just making another run, looking like he could be like the toughest matchup for like anyone in that division
Yeah.
because he just won't go away unless you're Rumble Johnson and you can knock him out with one uppercut.
Yeah,
Like,
and Rumble might come back. I heard that he's either entering the testing pool again or planning a comeback in the UFC.
and
So
is he coming to light heavyweight?
that's a good question. I feel like he is, but I have no idea. I could see
Oh,
him at heavyweight too.
okay, yeah. So you got Yuri, you got Rakic, you got Thiago Santos, you got Glover, you got Jan, you have Izzy looking like he's about to come up.
You gotta
Um,
still count John Jones might come back,
you
and you still can't count out what's his name, the Salamander, Dominic Reyes. I mean, it's not his
Salamander.
real nickname, but
Yep.
that's what I call him.
Then you got that other guy who's in City Kickboxing, the new guy, Carlos Uberg
I
or
don't think I know
Umberg.
him.
He's from the Contender Series, and
Okay.
he's also one of Izzy's teammates. So he's another guy that has like crazy experience in kickboxing, and apparently, like when Izzy says that he gives him a lot of problems, like in sparring, and he's about to be in
Yeah.
light heavyweight. So that's another like dynamic striker for that division. So I mean, the light heavyweight division is, it looks like the competition is starting to like really like evolve.
Yeah, I agree. It's honestly, it's a stacked division again. The only thing I'm worried about is, you know, Izzy holding up the division. Don't get me wrong. I want to see Izzy come in and be the champ. But, you have Glover. He has to wait now, even though I think he's, deserving of a title shot or another one. You have John Jones. Who knows what's going on there? Is he going to want to come back down the light heavyweight? You got Yuri, who I think is going to be champ one day. So, the super fights, with Izzy, it might hold up the division, but still, there should be some good, contenders in there.
Man, the crazy thing is, Izzy might have like the hardest route to being the GOAT ever. Like if you think about it, right? Because he's not someone who's really considered to be like ahead of his time. He's like kind of, he's like right where, okay, so I'll give an example. Like Anderson Silva, John Jones, I consider them to be like ahead of their time. So they were just like kind
Yeah.
of like smoking dudes. on their rise, to
Yeah.
greatness. But when you look at Izzy, these people are kind of like right there with him in terms of the evolution of MMA. It's like, you get what I'm saying? Like if you look at we'll look at the middleweight division. Um you have Whitaker, right? It's not that he's more it's not that he's more evolved than someone like Whitaker. It's just that he's just more precise. He's a little faster, and
Yeah.
that's what makes him like have the edge over these other fighters. But when you look at his competition in both divisions, if you look at him versus the Joker, someone like the Joker, if he takes him down, he can give Izzy some problems. Or if you look at
Yeah.
if he goes up to the light heavyweight division, someone like Rackage, has a lot of power, so he can possibly clip him, send him to the shadow realm. You get what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah.
Thiago Santos. Like, these are not easy matchups. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, yeah. Tiago's in that light heavyweight division too. Yeah, you know what? I feel like most of the time when fighters move up a weight class, sometimes they're successful, but I feel like more times than not, they're not successful. Either they don't do well in their first fight, or like even like RDA, look at him. He went to welterweight, had some good fights, beat some killers, but you could tell he was never gonna win the welterweight strap. So with middleweight to light heavyweight, that's a big jump. That's 20 pounds. Where, like, if you look at McGregor, he went from featherweight looking like Skeletor to lightweight, which is probably his best weight class. So, Izzy, maybe hopefully he doesn't look like Luke Rockhold. Remember when he moved up to light heavyweight? He looked huge, but looked like he lost a lot of the speed. Hopefully he doesn't lose sharpness. Hopefully these bigger guys don't just outmuscle him.
Yeah.
So,
So mhm.
or maybe he shines at light heavyweight. I mean, maybe he just, murders the top three guys at light heavyweight and even beats John Jones. And then moves up to heavyweight to fight John or Stipe for the
Oh
heavyweight
yeah, yeah,
belt.
yeah.
He
I
was
mean, you
talking about it.
you got to think, if he's faster than most of these middleweights, you got to think he's going to have a crazy speed advantage when he goes up to light heavyweight, because he doesn't plan to like put on a bunch of muscle when he goes up to light heavyweight. He plans to just kind of stay around where his weight is now. So, I mean, if these guys can't get a hold of him in middleweight, how are they really going to get a hold of him in light heavyweight?
Yeah, you know what? I'm not a nutritionist. I'm an armchair expert, but I feel like if I was Izzy, I would put on just a couple pounds of muscle, but I would not bulk up. I wouldn't bulk up to, let's just say, 230 and then cut down to 205. You know what? Even if he's a little undersized at light heavyweight, I feel like being hydrated and being closer to his body weight that he's been like the last couple of years, I feel like he's going to have the most success doing that, because you really do see a lot of these guys moving up a lot of weight. They just, it's the same story again. They're cutting weight at an extreme amount, but now maybe they lose the sharpness or they're not as quick. So, you know what? He should just barely cut weight, move up, and just see how he does at light heavyweight. If I were him, that's what I would do.
I agree, because he has a lot of precision. So it's not, we've seen time and time again that it doesn't take a ridiculous power for him to take these guys out. He's not, Israel is not the type of fighter who lands bombs. Like, he just lands them like right on the perfect spot. Like, when you look
Yeah.
at him against Paulo Costa, you look at him against Robert Whitaker, he just hit these people in the right spot. So there's not that big of a difference between hitting a heavyweight on the jaw. I mean, a light heavyweight on the jaw, like in that right spot, and
Yeah.
because it's literally a button. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's just pressing a button. So I think now the question is, do you think he's gonna fight Jan next? Because Jan doesn't want to fight till March.
I saw that. I hope he does. I hope he fights Jan for the title, gets it, and then it gets weird from there because John Jones vacated the belt. What is John doing? Is he fighting Stipe? Does John come back down the light heavyweight and fight Izzy? I mean, there's a lot of what ifs. I think if Izzy wins the light heavyweight belt, I think John's coming back down, and we're gonna have one of the biggest pay-per-view events of all time.
So I think what's going on right now is John doesn't really have a worthy opponent that's available at this point, because you got Curtis Blades that he's booked with Derek Lewis, and then Ngannou um, and Stipe seem to be setting up to fight like in
Yeah,
March,
I
I
think that
believe.
is essentially booked, right?
Yeah, pretty much. So really, when you look at it, the only choice he has is to fight someone like Izzy right now, or skip over someone like Glover and fight Jan for the title.
Yeah, it's what, John's in a really bad place because yeah, it doesn't seem like he's getting the heavyweight title shot until Stipe and Ngannou, and then it kind of doesn't make sense for John to fight Izzy at light heavyweight if there's no belt on the line. Don't get me wrong, it'll be a super fight, but how hyped would you be if Izzy takes the belt from Jan and then John Jones is like, I'm coming back. I'm
Oh
coming back
man,
for my belt.
man, that shit would be wild. And there's so much amazing movement going on in the light heavyweight division too, because you got like Santos who's set to fight with Rakic.
Yeah.
So you got to think the winner of that fight will be exciting with someone like Izzy. Hopefully Izzy would win against, Jan, and then imagine like the options that he has. Like it's like either John Jones it's either him against John Jones or Santos or Rakic. Any of those fights, like sign me up.
Well, what I'm worried about with Izzy? Assuming he doesn't put on a lot of weight, or even if he does, as a natural middleweight, I'm afraid that, let's just say Izzy fought Glover at light heavyweight. Glover might just throw him around like a little kid. Like, Glover is strong. He has a good ground game, good clinching. If some of those light heavyweights with a good, ground game or clinching get a hold of Izzy, they might just manhandle him and murder him on the ground. So I think Izzy's got to really keep his range and just hit some, like, laser guided strikes, because you know, Glover's getting old, but you have a younger natural light heavyweight. They grab Izzy, they might just rip his arm off.
So, here's the thing. I said something controversial last week. I basically said that um, Glover is probably the toughest matchup for Izzy in the light heavyweight division right now. And the reason why I said that is because Glover, Glover fights with pressure the whole time, right?
Yeah.
Like he fought with pressure when he was fighting Kutalaba. These are young lions. Kutalaba, Thiago Santos recently, who arguably beat John Jones, and
Yeah.
he fought with pressure to the point where they couldn't really get their footing, and then next thing you know, they're getting submitted by him. So it's like, you have to basically knock him out. If you're not Rumble Johnson, it's so difficult to just knock out Glover. So Izzy would have to fight on his back foot the whole time, as opposed to
Yeah.
someone like John Jones, who's not necessarily fighting with pressure at all times.
I do think that Glover is one of the toughest matchups for Izzy at light heavyweight. I mean, look at Thiago Santos. He hit him with some big shots, and we've seen Glover get knocked out before. I think was it Rumble that hit him with an uppercut and knocked
Yeah,
him the fuck out?
yeah.
Um, I mean, we know Thiago hits hard. I mean, he was cracking Glover with some shots multiple times, and Glover just bulldozed him. That was crazy. You know what? Izzy, I don't know. Maybe Izzy hits him in the right spot, knocks him out, but I don't think Izzy hits as hard as Thiago. And Glover was just like, nah, hold my beer, and just just speared him and just ragdolled him on the ground. So, but you know what? We kind of know how the UFC works. Glover probably deserves the next title shot, but Dana White's gonna be like, nah, you know what? Izzy's next, and then if Izzy wins, he'll be like, sorry, Glover, John Jones is next.
Oh
So
man.
I think, and Glover's only getting older. I mean, I think he's 42.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I feel a little bad about that because it would kind of be a Cinderella story if someone like Glover was to win the title by this point in his career. You know, because think about it, like Uberim is still trying to make a run at the title at this point, and you kind of just know deep down that there's no way he's gonna get past like any of these guys, like a Ngannou or a Stipe, or it's just it's just too much to ask for at this point. And then he's probably gonna have to face some kind of murderous role, like to even get to them, like one of these fighters from the Contender Series, or even like that guy who's always reaching for his inhaler. What's his name?
Oh,
Uh,
Greg Hardy.
Greg Hardy. Even a Greg Hardy is like really dangerous for like a Uberim at this point. Yeah, so like
Yeah.
or Curtis Blades even. Like you have to get through Curtis Blades. You get
Listen,
what I'm saying?
I
So
think, yeah, I think Curtis Blades is going to be the heavyweight champ in the next 2 years because he's a young guy. He's a giant heavyweight. His wrestling is, I think he has the best wrestling at heavyweight, hands down. And if he hits you, you're probably going to sleep.
pretty much like he actually has pretty good striking because there's always the threat of the takedown. So that's
Yeah,
what allows him to have these openings. Because when he was fighting that Russian guy, Volkov, like he was
yeah.
cracking him. He was cracking him. So I don't know. I think he does have a chance within the next 2 years, but I think like in the near future it's probably gonna be Ngannou.
Yeah, and with Curtis Blades versus Derek Lewis, I like Derek Lewis. I love when he says the dumbest shit possible after a fight. I like when like when he knocked out Volkov with 3 seconds on the clock. I like watching him fight, but honestly, I think Curtis Blades is his kryptonite. There's no way Derek Lewis is going to out wrestle him. He's got a puncher's chance, but even though we've seen Blades get knocked out, he's got a pretty good chin on him. I think he's just going to wrestle fuck Derek Lewis every round and maybe even knock him the fuck out. That's what I predict is going to happen.
But it's so crazy though, right? You would think that, but then you also gotta consider the fact that someone like Ngannou is not necessarily a wrestling expert either. Like Derek Lewis might actually have more experience wrestling than Ngannou, and somehow
Yeah,
Ngannou seems to knock um what's his name to the shadow realm. Like
everyone.
when you think, yeah,
Almost everyone.
yeah, pretty much. So it's like it's weird, like that. Like you would think that what's his name, Curtis Blades, is Ngannou's kryptonite, but yet he's lost two fights to
Yeah.
Ngannou. So
Now, I do think that second stoppage with Blades was a little soon, but it didn't look like, it did look like Francis was going to just keep murdering him.
oh my God, that would have probably changed his career like trajectory for the worse. Like if he would have hit him with like a couple of more shots on the ground,
Yeah.
like his chin wouldn't be the same as we know it.
Oh man, I love when Francis Ngannou fights. Man, when he bum rushed Rosenstrike and just murdered him, and 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 Ngannou seems like a nice guy. What would be hilarious if he was like the shittiest human in real life, and he also murders you, like he's on TMZ just uppercutting kids in front of a schoolyard.
Oh man, it was just like honestly, when I watched that fight, to me it was when I watched Ngannou versus Rosenstrike, to me it was like watching like like it was like watching kind of like two apes fight. Because it's like it's like one ape was just saying to the other ape like I'm the superior ape. Like you understand what I'm saying? Like he just moved.
Yeah,
There was
yeah.
no technique involved. Like he just moved forward on him and just swung, and then and then just knocked him clean out. So it was one of those situations where it was just like who's the alpha ape in this situation?
Yeah, I mean, and Ngannou, he's such an animal. I mean, I just want to, imagine this. Imagine if he somehow, imagine this universe. He gets cut from the UFC and he goes to these other divisions and just juices up to the gills. He would be 350 pounds. They would have him fighting real animals in the zoo. They would have like a maybe a juvenile silverback gorilla because I think Tyson back in the day he tried to fight a gorilla for real, and I could see Francis Ngannou just going to the zoo in Russia and just being like, which one can I knock out first?
Oh man, but anyway, like what fights before we get out of here, let's talk about what fights we're excited about like in the near future. So for me, I would have to say Hamzat versus Leon Edwards still.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
there was another fight. Oh, Tony Ferguson apparently called out Chandler. So the thought of
yeah.
that like gets me super excited.
Yeah. Oh, those are great fights. Yeah, especially I'm so curious to see what Michael Chandler looks like in the UFC. But some of the fights I'm really excited for is now we know Figueredo is fighting, I think, next weekend.
Yeah,
Let's just
against
say he wins. I want to see that fight him versus
Cody.
Cody Garbrandt. Yeah, that I think that'll be a banger because Cody looked good in his last fight or his last two fights. And then we got TJ Dillashaw coming back as early as January. So I'd like to see him without Lance in his corner to see how good he does.
He said without
Um,
Lance.
yeah, and for the audience, that's me alluding to the EPO that TJ and Lance Armstrong both used at points of their career. But
Yeah.
what else? We got Brendan Royval too, that flyweight.
Brandon
He's
Royval.
fighting he's fighting next week, and that should be fun. And I have to say, my favorite Florida man is fighting next weekend as well. That's Platinum Mike Perry.
Oh
Who
yeah, who's he
knows who
fighting
this?
again?
The Dirty Bird, Tim
Oh,
Means.
Dirty Bird. Tim Means, yeah.
I want to see who he has in his corner. So is Mike Perry going to have a full corner, or is it going to be his pregnant girlfriend and whatever Reddit user, bid the most money to be in his corner and give him, neckbeard armchair advice? I was hoping it'd be me, but he didn't. He didn't take my offer of $2,000. When I slipped into his DMs, he never responded. But Mike Perry's always exciting.
Oh man, Mike Perry is actually more entertaining for what he does outside of the octagon than what he does inside of the octagon at this point.
Yeah, just dropping the N bomb and knocking out old men at the bar.
To this day, I still imitate him. Like when I'm out there and like I see any kind of like commotion outside, I'd be like, "You gonna call the police?"
Who told him to speak like that?
Oh man, that shit was hilarious. That I don't know what that old guy was thinking anyway. Like how do you like mimic Mike Perry? Then he tells you this is a young fucking bull. He tells you, "I will knock your old ass out." He's like, "Come on, then, motherfucker." And then Mike, he just all you see is him disappearing from the frame after getting caught with a
Oh
left hook.
man.
You
You know
heard
what?
not only does he disappear from the frame, but you hear the impact of him falling to the ground.
Man, and that old guy's probably dumb too, because he probably doesn't know this is a UFC, fighter. Where if I ran into Ngannou or let's just say Mike Perry out on the street, I don't know, man. I might want to get that lawsuit. I might go up to Ngannou and be like, "I heard you hit like a bitch," and just see if I can get like $100,000 settlement. Be like, "I don't know, he hit me. I don't remember." But that Mike Perry beating up old men, that reminds me of when McGregor was peddling his proper 12 whiskey, I think at a bar in Ireland. And I think he was trying to pour everyone a shot or a rocks glass. And some old man's like, "I don't drink this shite." And then McGregor hits him with the two-piece combo. And the old man just shrugs it off like, it's just another day at the bar.
Oh man, that's
Have you
that's
seen that video
yeah, I seen it.
in
I
the
see
bar?
it. I seen it. That's the Irish genes for you. Oh
Man,
man,
that
but
old man just shrugged it off. He's like, he's like, "Give me some real whiskey."
damn, that guy, he should have got recruited to the UFC like a long time ago. He might have been like fucking champ like back in his day.
Champion of every division.
Every division. No, no, as far as the Tony Ferguson versus the Chandler fight, do you know if that's like close to being finalized is that or is that
No,
just in
um,
talks?
not that I know, because I think there's four real major contenders at lightweight right now that they could shuffle any fight around. You got Michael Chandler, Tony Ferguson, you get Charles Oliveira, and Justin Gaethje. You can honestly argue, you could do like tic tac toe. You could do any of those four fighters fighting any of them, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Got you. And the Poirier McGregor, is that close to being done, or what's going on with that?
I heard so. You never know. It does seem like that's going to happen. Yeah, McGregor's going to have a busy year next year because let's just say he fights Poirier and he wins. Then he's got another shot at Khabib or whoever's the champion. I mean, not in my opinion. That's just what I think what would happen.
Hmm.
And then he's fighting Manny Pacquiao, which is going to be hilarious.
Oh my God. I think Pacquiao, to be honest, will do a lot more damage than Floyd did. Like even at this age,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
Pacquiao is extremely offensive. So that could really change McGregor's career from this point.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think realistically, I mean, what is Manny Pacquiao? Let's just say he's 42, 44. He's somewhere around that. I think that Pacquiao would have to be in his middle to late 50s before McGregor has a real shot at beating him in a boxing match.
Man, I don't even know about that. Have you ever seen George Foreman, if I'm not mistaken, became a heavyweight champion at like 50. So
Yeah, yeah.
so it's like even hard, that's even hard to say because there's something to be said for like old man strength sometimes. And then by that point, he's probably mastered his skills, um not mastered the skills, but by that point he still has that boxing expertise where McGregor has more so MMA expertise. So that's even hard to call sometimes.
You know what? I agree. He might have to be older because you made me think about Roy Jones Jr., who I believe is 48 and fighting in like a week or two. I
Right.
think
He's
he might have been the
he's over 50.
Roy Jones Jr.
He's like 51.
You're right because I think Tyson is 54 maybe, but I think Roy Jones Jr. might have been the oldest person to win a boxing title. Now, I don't know if it was the cruiserweight title, the light heavyweight, or even some German promotion. I don't know what. I'm not an expert at the boxing belts, but Roy Jones Jr. I bet is real sharp and was only a couple years away from actually getting a title. So I take back what I said. I think Manny Pacquiao has to be in his early 60s and McGregor doesn't age, and maybe then he beats him in a boxing match.
Got you. One last person I want to touch on is Hamzat, who seems to be the strongest prospect, like in just in the UFC in general, because he seems like a legit threat in welterweight and what do you call that? Um,
Middleweight.
and middleweight. So
Yeah.
like I feel like someone like him, he's basically like a Khabib 2.0. Like because I think he has more clever and more clean striking than someone like Khabib, and he has more power. Plus, he has the same kind of wrestling style, relentless chain wrestling style that Khabib has. So that's why I was saying that Izzy kind of has like the toughest route to being the GOAT probably ever because he has to deal with all the dynamic talent in the middleweight division, but then you also have to deal with the dynamic talent like in the light heavyweight division. So in the middleweight division, you even have someone like Hamzat who's willing to come up from welterweight, who fights in a very Khabib kind of style. So he has to deal with, and a lot of people consider someone like Khabib to be the GOAT. You understand what I mean? So he has to deal with
Yeah.
so many different types of styles in order to be considered the GOAT.
Yeah, I could see Hamzat being the champ, but I think we don't really know. He's largely untested. I would love to see him be successful. I think he's got to pick a weight class though, because if he can make welterweight, I think he should stick at that weight class because middleweight's a big jump, and some of those guys are pretty big. But I also at the same time think Usman, as the welterweight champion, man, that he's such a strong wrestler and has great cardio. I feel like Usman is going to be a real problem from everyone at welterweight just because of his style.
Hmm.
And then middleweight, you got someone like you got Izzy, you got like Jack Hermanson. If Hamzat is a bit undersized at middleweight, he might run into problems. But I definitely want to see him just start murking dudes, or actually continue murking dudes.
Got you. Just in theory, I would have to say that Hamzat, his style is kind of like the kryptonite for someone like Usman, just for the fact that both of them kind of cancel each other out in terms of wrestling, as you saw with like Usman and a Kobe Covington. Like they didn't, no one took each other down. And
Yeah.
then Hamzat has power that what's his name, Kobe Covington doesn't have. So, like in theory, you'd have to think that he would be the toughest matchup um, right now that I could think of, like as someone who hasn't fought Usman.
Yeah, I could see that. If we know for sure Hamzat is legit, which is, that very well may be true. I could see him if he can stuff or resist just the Usman wrestle fuck for every round and then hit him with some shots. Yeah, I could see him being champ.
So how do you see it? How do you see the fight with Hamzat and Leon Edwards going? Because
Hmm.
that's gonna tell us everything that we need to know.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think this is going to be the real test for Hamzat. I mean, if he could stand there, maybe I don't know. Does Leon doesn't really shoot for takedowns, does he? He's more of a striker, right?
Yeah, he's more of a striker, but he's very well versed in wrestling. I don't know if it's like on a Hamzat level, because Usman was able to beat Leon Edwards um, through sheer wrestle fucking.
Yeah, I still think Hamzat takes it. I mean, this guy looks good. I think he has, from what I remember, like unorthodox striking. Leon Edwards might just be, standard throw combinations, maybe hop around a bit. I could see Hamzat hitting him from like, left field and just hitting him with some weird punches that puts him on his ass. That's how I
Yeah.
think that fight's gonna go down.
Okay. So you have Hamzat most likely at this point right now. You have him most likely winning that fight.
You know what? I could blindly bet on either. You know what the thing is? I think I just want Hamzat to win because he's such a budding prospect. Where Leon Edwards, he kind of bores me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I get what you
Listen,
mean.
he might be champ one day, but honestly, the worst thing about MMA is like you start liking these new prospects, like Johnny Walker, for example. Man, I love watching him fight, and then he gets knocked the fuck out. I'm like, damn.
So and what's his name? As far as Chaos, what would you want to see? Who would you want to see him? Because he's in the welterweight division. Who would you want
Yeah,
to see him matched up against next?
I know the answer immediately. Mike Perry. I think that'd be the funnest fight. No wrestling, just CTE until someone walks out of there. What about
So
you? Who do
that's
you
a
want to see
that
Chaos fight next?
that's an interesting one. I would have to say I would like to see him fight Vicente Luque next
Oh yeah,
because
that's a good matchup.
he seems to be more technical than someone like Mike Perry. So I could kind of see him winning that fight against Mike Perry. So I want to see what happens when you put someone like him who's very game against someone like Luque. Because Luque is extremely game. Luque is extremely durable. So imagine seeing that kind of chaos go on for like 3 rounds. You understand what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
that'd be a
So
great fight. Yeah.
yeah. So well, that's it for today's episode. Um, that was our this is our reaction to everything, all the craziness that went on this weekend. To stay tuned for the next predictions for the next card. And yeah, peace out.